And taking a call on this bill. People who are regular watchers of Parliament will know that Labor has taken up its full number of calls, but the government, for some bizarre reason, particularly the government's junior partner, the ACT Party, has chosen not to take their calls on a bill which, as you yourself rightly pointed out, Mr Speaker, is raising a lot of passion, raising a lot of concern. I think the government should be taking their full calls to explain to the public why this is a good bill, to explain why it's so urgent, and to explain why putting New Zealand's children at risk of harm is such a good idea. Under urgency. This government is shirking its responsibilities, and it hasn't even got the guts to stand up and tell New Zealand why it is doing so. Mr Speaker, as has been made quite clear by opposition members, we do oppose this bill. Although it has a number of fairly unconsequential matters in it, there are a number of things which are of such consequence that we need to. Well, it's clear we have to oppose this bill. And the key areas are around the exemption for limited attendance centres from early childhood education licensing standards. In particular, the requirement that those taking care of young children have a police check to make sure that they are of good enough character and they don't have anything in their history which suggests that they are unfit to take care of small children. The other area of particular concern to us is, of course, this hereditary entitlement for people or for children who would not ordinarily qualify to go to a school within a certain zone, to get them bumped up the list. And I suppose Joe Goodhue mentioned ideological differences. I suppose that is an ideological position of the National Party, this sort of idea of inherited entitlement. It fits quite well with them, so it's something that I suppose doesn't come as much of a surprise from. Sorry, what was that, Colin? Mr. King has something to say. Entitlement. You've lost me. Anyway, you've lost most people in New Zealand, to be fair. But I would like to address, Mr. Speaker, some of the comments made by Louise Upston. I've had a chance to spend some time with Louise Upston away from Parliament. I know she is passionate about education, but I thought some of her contributions on this bill at times were somewhat nonsensical. But she started off with that old chestnut. The government is spending more than ever before on education. It's absolutely true. It's true, because every single year, every single government spends more on education than they did the year before. It's just like health. The question is, is that increased funding actually keeping up with inflation, and does it keep up with needs to actually even allow the system to stand still? It doesn't matter whether or not the government is spending more. Governments always will. I think that's one thing we can rely on. Death, taxes, and governments will spend more on health and education. I think those are the three certainties in life. But to get up and crow about that and to say it's something special that this government has achieved, well, maybe the government has achieved so little, that's why they need to crow about something as insignificant as that. Louise Upston then went on to talk about how trades academies will be able to function with more flexibility. That's not true. The policy that is legislated for in this bill, first of all, didn't particularly need legislation anyway. It's one of the schizophrenic parts of this bill that, on the one hand, this bill, the government through this bill seeks to cut red tape, but on the other hand is unnecessarily bureaucratic with its provisions around the secondary, tertiary aspects of this bill. Trades academies will not be able to function more flexibly, and Ms Upston talked about how we're all, I'm sure many members, Mrs Upston talked about how many members have recently been attending prize givings around the country, and that's true. I have, probably just about every member has, and I've seen plenty of awards handed out by trades academies and ITOs to school students who are engaging in that sort of that transition phase between secondary school and trades or tertiary. A number of students actually studying at university level as well, which has been pleasing to see. So not new. Louise Upston said this was a very important policy that the National Party had stood on at the last election. Well, that's interesting because it was Labour policy. So if they're so proud of Labour policy, that's good news. We'll take that one. Notch another one up. Notch another one up for the Labour Party. Limited attendance centres and glass panels. Louise Upston focused a lot on how when she goes to her gym, they have a glass panel and she can see her children through the glass panel. Well, first of all, this isn't just about gyms. This is also about centres at shopping centres as well. And parents it should not sit on parents' shoulders. This weight of responsibility should not sit on parents' shoulders when they go to a shopping centre to have to figure out whether or not the centre is providing and whether or not they have employed people, someone who is capable of taking care of those children. They should have that certainty. Parents should have the certainty when they... That's right. Anne Tolley says they should just ask, excuse me, are your staff members child sex offenders? Could you tell me about that, please? Could you imagine? I would like to see the Minister going in and asking that question. Parents shouldn't have to ask that question. They should have the certainty. They should have the certainty available to them. And this is what the government is saying to parents. The government takes no responsibility. If something goes wrong, and your child is abused, if you are a parent, if as a parent your child is abused, the government says that's your fault. That's your responsibility. You should have taken more care about where you left your children. That is absolutely wrong. That is far too much to leave up to parents. Parents should have the certainty. The government should create the environment wherein parents have the certainty. Now, Joe Goodhue got up and said, well, businesses won't want to put themselves at risk, and I think that's a fair call. For the most part, businesses won't want to put themselves at risk. But what these provisions are about are not about early childhood centres who have an interest in the well-being of children. This is about businesses whose business is something that has nothing to do with children whatsoever, be it a gym, be it a shopping centre, be it whatever it is. They are not people whose bread and butter trade is in dealing with children and in the safety of children. And when the squeeze goes on, like in just post-recession times that we're in at the moment, when costs are being cut and when people are looking for every last little place where they can cut costs, then maybe something will get overlooked. Maybe the police vet that the National Party says the business will take responsible for, maybe they'll overlook it. Why? Because they don't need to do it. It's a cost that they do not have to include, and it might just help the bottom line look a little bit better. And I agree that 99.9% of the time things will probably go smoothly. But would the Minister like to be the parent of the child who is involved in that 0.01% situation? Would the Minister like to be the parent of that child? Would the Minister ask the centre? Yeah, it's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility, says the Minister. It's not my responsibility as the Minister of Education or a Minister of the Crown in this government to create the environment in New Zealand where children are safe and where parents have certainty about the safety of their children. That's not my responsibility, says the Minister of Education. How about that? How about that? How about that for a message to the parents in New Zealand? That the government says they are not prepared to ensure the safety of children in New Zealand. That's the message that this government is giving in this bill. That is absolutely right, Minister. That is the message that you are sending to New Zealand. Sorry, that is the message that the Minister. It's certainly not you, Mr. Speaker.
Time's expired
to the
anyway.
Minister.
So the